Hey folks, hope everybody's doing well. I got a few things to show you tonight. My video should be popping up here. Very good. So a few things I'm going to be talking about tonight. One is I'm going to be talking about the plant collection, kind of how it's going to go down. That's going to be your main topic for tonight. And then we'll kind of talk a little bit about sort of the end of semester. So let's go ahead and talk about that end semester stuff since it's very little bit. First thing, I want you to have all assignments turned in no later than the 28th. The 28th is the final day of class, and I got to have all the assignments turned in no later than that day. If it's late, better late than never, but make sure you do turn something in to me. No later than the 28th. Also, this plant collection is something that takes some time, so I highly recommend that you start this early. You should have the recording here in a few minutes, so everybody should be good. I'll send everybody a notification to let them know that the recording has happened, so you go ahead and watch it. And finally, the final exam is not a cumulative exam. It only covers the plants module. So there's usually a lot of questions about that. So hopefully that straightens some of that out. So, okay, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the plant collection. So it's called the Plant Diversity Project, but it's a nice little plant collection that we're going to put together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and skip right on down to this third page. These first two pages are great. I want you to read through those, but the meat of the assignment is right here. Because what this is a checklist. And on this checklist, there are 37 different things. I'm going to go through here and I'm going to count the number of things you got right out of 37, and boom, that's the grade for this portion of the assignment. It's very simple. There's another portion to the assignment, however, that's even easier. All you have to do is put together all of these things: leaf structure, shapes, arrangements, margins, venation, all the different diversities. Put that in a PowerPoint presentation, however you want to. Save it as a PDF. You're going to schedule a time with me to present. It's just going to be you and I, and we'll present through Teams, and I'll record it so that we have record of everything. And you're going to get a 100 simply by presenting it. You don't even have to do well. I mean, all you got to do is just simply present it, and you get a 100. I'm not going to be grading you on your presentation skills, but I want you to present it to me face to face. That way I can show, or well, virtually face to face. That way you can show me things and point stuff out. For instance, when we're looking at leaf blade over here, instead of just having this image that's so, I don't know, busy with all these things, you can say, yeah, the leaf blade, and you can use your mouse to show me. The leaf blade goes around this way. The leaf blade is this. The petiole is the leaf stem right here. It's pronounced petiole. And then finally, the center portion here is the midrib. If you notice, those are the first three things: leaf blade, the leaf midrib, and the petiole. All I got to do is have a picture of a plant that you have found that has a leaf, and you put that on your PowerPoint, and you can show me, or you can draw arrows if you want to beforehand. So whatever you want to do. And then you let me know that that's what you have found. That will be how you do this assignment. Now, I will go through each one of these groups, except plant diversity. I'm going to talk about these. I'm not going to show examples. I'm going to let you find those because that's kind of the fun part. But I am going to show examples of each one of these through here. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about how we're going to do our collection part. You don't actually have to pick anything. Everything is electronics. The photographs is perfect. And you have a camera phone more than likely. If not, contact me and I can hook you up with something. But all you got to do is take pictures of the leaf, and then you're going to take a picture of you holding the leaf in selfie mode. So why I'm doing this is because it's so easy just to Google your way through this. Well, I love Google. It's wonderful. It corrects spelling mistakes and all sorts of stuff. It really helps. The problem is it's not fair. It's not fair to everyone else. So using search engines and things are wonderful study, techniques and stuff, but it's not something that we want to present for a grade in some sort of professional format. You actually have to need to go out and find that. And how I'm going to ensure that that leaf or that plant is something you found yourself is you're going to have the plant and you're going to have your picture in the same, or your face in the same picture. So you're going to take a selfie with the plant, and I know, hey, John Doe took this picture with this plant, so thus he found it. Additionally, the plant has to be in habitat. I can't have you going to Lowe's or Home Depot or some sort of lawn and garden section looking through their plants and knowing all the names. I actually need you to do a little bit of the homework that's part of this assignment. So go out and look in habitat, visit your local parks, look in your yard. You probably don't even have to leave your yard to do all this. There's a really good chance that everything you need is within 5 miles of your house, if not even closer. Like I said, a lot of your yard may have everything that you need. So that's a little bit of the requirements here. All you got to do is put together a presentation, and then you're going to present that to me. Now, you might be wondering, well, when do we actually present? Well, that's sort of up to you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out there's a message board that I specifically have, and it's at the very bottom of the plants module. And I'm going to give you an example of this. I'm actually navigating to it right now so you can see it. Plant collection presentation times, and that's what we're going to do. So this is your presentation board. So you're going to click this, and you're going to post 2 times. You prefer daytime and prefer evening time. Now, the way it's going to work is you're going to pick between the following dates. You're going to pick between Sunday, July 24th through Wednesday, July 27th. Any time between those dates is good with me. Now, I gave you a weekend day and then 3 weekdays. If that doesn't work and you need to do earlier, please reach out to me and let me know. I can work with you on that. We can do earlier on that. We can't do later. We can't do past the 28th. We need to have it done earlier. But since it's the 18th, it's a good full week before the next presentation day. So hopefully that'll give you plenty of time. What you'll do is you'll post your 2 times in a message board, just like this. And let's say that you wanted, you wanted the 25th at 8 p.m. And let's say Sally Ann also wanted the 25th at 8 p.m. But you posted before Sally Ann. That means you get preference on that time. And I will say, is this the time that you want? Yes, boom. I put a calendar reminder. It's all done through Teams. You get it all sent to your email. Makes it very simple to work through. So that's how I'm going to handle that part. So you pick a time. We'll present one-on-one. Again, it's recorded. That way we've got record of everything. And, well, you get 100s by presenting it, and then I work through the checklist here, and whatever out of 37 is your grade on the other part. So I like this opportunity for students to finish strong, and this gives them that opportunity. So let's go ahead and start working through some of this stuff. And I'm going to work through, first off, I'm going to work through the leaf structures here. So the leaf structures, you can see, this again is the blade, this entire green portion. The midrib goes up the center, and finally at the bottom is the petiole. So those are the first 3. If you're following along, this would be a good time to be following along on that sheet if you have it in front of you. If not, you can print it off later. The next is leaf shapes. And leaf shapes, the 4 examples that we've given here are circular, lance, oval, and heart. So I'll go and show the circular first. I picked this as a circular. I thought this is a pretty handy little picture. It's a clover. And if you notice, one of these is very circular-like. Is it perfect? No, but it's close enough for me. So that's what I'm looking at. You wouldn't want to pick one of these. These are more elongated, almost oval-like. This one right here is a much more example of a circular leaf. Up next is lance leaf, and you can see lance leaf is here. Lance leaf is this long, elongated, sort of stabby, knife-looking leaf blade. And this actually has to be part of the lance leaf coreopsis, which is a yellow blooming flower that you might be able to find. And not only can you count that as a lance leaf, you can also count that as an example of your angiosperm and correctly identified. So you see, you don't have to find as many plants as you think. You can use them for both leaf structure, shape, arrangement, margin, venation, and part of the diversity part as well. So make sure you try to double up best you can. Up next is oval leaf, and this is part of a black gum here. It's a pretty common tree in our area. This is very oval-like. Is it perfect? No, but it's not round and it's not lance. It's more of an oval shape. And then finally, a heart leaf. Now, this is a tricky one to find. Students struggle with this one. A good example of a heart leaf is a red bud, and a good place to look for red buds are behind the library on campus. If you're pretty close to, campus, I highly recommend using our woods and our property to search through. We have tons and tons of property back there, and actually have a lot of good diversity. We've got a nature trail and all sorts of things. So I would recommend checking out that. Another one's a morning glory. If you find a morning glory, you can see morning glory has that sort of heart leaf shape here as well. So it's a good example of a heart leaf shape. Red buds or morning glory, either one are good examples. Up next is leaf arrangement, and leaf arrangement is here. So you've really got three major examples: alternate, opposite, and whorled. And alternate means that you have a leaf on the right, then on the left, or right, then left, right, then left. It's almost like military marching orders. Right, left, right, left. That's kind of what I think of when I think of alternate leaf arrangement. Opposite is almost like you're hopping with 2 feet. So you go from here to here to here, both right and left, both right and left, and then both right and left. As you notice, they're not staggered, they're together. They're originating from the same node is what I'm talking about here. We'll call this a node. Both leaves originate here. You come here, they're originating at the same height along this branch. And then finally, whorled. Whorled is just a complex version of opposite. It just means that instead of having 2 leaves, it's got 3 or more. So 3 or more leaves originating from the same node continuously over a pattern is a good example of whorled. Up next is leaf margins. And leaf margins, we're going to start out with one that's very common, very easy to find in our area. This is the eastern white oak. The eastern white oak, or Quercus alba is its scientific name, is a great example of a lobed leaf. And you can see these elongated lobes sticking out of this leaf. Right there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Over here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I've got a tip lobe. So I've got 4 on each side and then 1 tip lobe. That would be a nice example of a lobed leaf. Next is serrate, and I can't think of a better example of a serrate leaf than the American beech, another tree that's very common in your area. You can find them generally around riverbanks. I think the Yadkin River floodplain is a really good place to search for them. But the American beech have a serrated leaf. Think about like a serrated knife. Maybe you're looking at like a steak knife, for instance. As you notice, it's not smooth, it's toothed. So that's what I would look at here. Is that a serrated leaf? Next we have smooth, and I didn't pick an example of smooth. I actually picked a drawing for a reason, because sometimes you'll see smooth labeled, instead of smooth, it'll be labeled as entire. So smooth or entire, either one means the same thing. And what that means is it's not toothed, nor is it lobed. It is completely smooth all the way around. Finally is wavy, and wavy can be the tricky one to find, but this is always a standby to find wavy. This happens to be the Bradford pear, and this is a wonderful example of a wavy leaf margin. You can see it undulates up and down and up and down. The problem with this is this tree is incredibly invasive and very problematic. It's a non-native tree, and it's invasive, which means that it simply takes over any habitat you planted in. It's a very popular tree. You can buy them at Lowe's Hardware today. The problem is that they are escaping cultivation, or escaping people's yards, and they're entering into our native environments, and they really provide no benefit. They don't provide a good food source. They don't provide good shelter. They lose their leaves early. They're quite problematic, and they tend to break, and they also tend to make these just kind of thickets. Thickets are good if they're native plants. Non-native thickets are quite troublesome, and this is one of them. If you have these planted in your yard, you can reach out to me, or you can talk to your local resource agent, like if you know your North Carolina Forestry Service agent in your area. If not, I can help you hook up with them, because they actually have a bounty on these trees right now. The way I understand is if you remove one, they will replace it with 2 natives. So if you're interested in having some of your trees removed and having some natives put back in their place, let me know and I can see what I can do for you. So let's move on to now leaf venation. And leaf venation comes in 3 different what we'll call flavors here. The first is palmate, and this is a nice example of palmate leaf venation. This is the American sycamore. You also find these trees, they indicate wet conditions, so you would find them on riverbanks, creek banks, stuff like that. A good example, or actually a good place to look for one, is the Yadkin River floodplain. If you're close to Yadkin River Park, I think they call it Yadkin Island Park, it's a great place to look for American sycamore and American beech. You can get to right there. What I'm looking for here is I'm looking for this massive midrib going down the middle, and even as large sort of what we're going to call secondary ribs coming off the edges, and then still large tertiary ridges and stuff going right down through this plant. It's very sectioned out and divided. And we call this palmate. And a good example is to look at your palm. If you were to hold open your hands, and I'm going to stop sharing just for a second so I can show you a nice little video of my hand here. So, okay, there we go. If you look at your hand, and you imagine each one of these are not parallel, it's very branching out. This is palmate. The other example is parallel, and parallel we'll see in just a moment. But what you do here is you bring your fingers together, and you see how the creases now are parallel. They're all traveling up together. That's parallel, and a good example of parallel would actually be grasses. And I've got one loaded up here as soon as it pops through. It should be popping through any second here. If you were to take a blade of grass and just look really close at it, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to see all these ridges, and all these ridges are traveling in the same directions. This is a great example of parallel leaf venation. And finally, the final leaf venation we're going to talk about is netted. And this is a good example of netted right here. And this happens to be the mountain maple. This plant is found in North Carolina, but it has a very rare distribution. Well, let me take that back. It's a rare plant that has a very spotty distribution. Its distribution is directly associated with elevation in our area. If you travel further and further north, you can find them at lower elevations. That's a fun little ecological concept. But and where we live, you actually have to travel up an elevation to get them. Closest county to you is probably Watauga County or Ashe County. Both of those are habitats for mountain maple. I don't think you're going to be able to get it in Surry County. If it's there, I'm quite surprised. So mountain maple, but if you notice, look at this leaf. Look how just divided, and look how just, it reminds me, unfortunately, of my grandmother and grandfather's faces. They both worked outside a lot. They were in the sun, farmers, gardeners, that type of thing. You know, they lived a long time ago. Back when sun care was not quite where we are today, and without sunscreens and stuff, their faces developed this incredibly deep wrinkled structure. And that's what we're kind of almost seeing here in this tree, but it goes beyond that. As you notice, there's more to it than a simple division that we see here. When we look at it, it's even more divided, and it does look like a grid or more of a netted style structure. So that's what I'm looking for, and I'm looking for netted. So that should have you on that. If you notice, I've got you on structure, shape, arrangement, margin, and venation. I've showed you examples of all of those. Again, you need to find your own examples. And then finally, it's all about diversity. Now, mosses, you need 3 examples of mosses. Mosses can be hard. A lot of times people have a tough time finding mosses. My best guess to look for mosses is look on trees, especially trees that are in the woods. Look all the way around the bases. Generally, I know the old adage, mosses grow on the north side. Sometimes, not all the time. The idea behind that is the south-facing slope gets sun first. So it should be warmer than the north side, which is the shaded side of the tree generally. But that doesn't always, it depends on the way the land is laid. The north side may be less shaded than the south. So it can be tricky when you're using it for navigation. It's not a good navigational method. But what it does tell you is it does tell you there's moisture there. Mosses have to have moisture. So a good place to look for mosses is creek banks, around streams, ponds, lakes, and also around trees. Look at the base of trees in wooded areas. If they're very bright and wide open, good chance you're not going to find a lot of moss there. You may. Another good place is around your foundation of your houses, especially if you have a basement. Good place to find mosses on the outside there. The next was ferns. Ferns is another tricky one that everybody has tough time with. The reason is everybody wants to show me the mimosa tree as a fern, and the mimosa tree is not a fern, even though it looks a lot like it. If you look at the leaf petals here, it's very fern-like in structure, but it's got this big, beautiful pink flower here, and that means that it's not a fern because it's a flowering plant. The mimosa tree does happen to be a non-native invasive as well, unfortunately. So don't buy them, don't plant them. They're bad news. Once you get started, you'll never get rid of them. But that is an example of a flowering plant that mimics a fern. So you need to find you 3 ferns. Another good places to look for ferns, creek bottoms. Go walk up a dark kind of forested stream. Even if it's tiny little brook, it can be a tiny little branch, and that's what you're looking for. 3 examples of pines. As you notice, that's pretty easy, but the tricky thing is here you have to identify them now. You don't have to identify mosses or ferns because those are hard, but you do have to identify the pines and the flowering plants. So some good examples of pines to look for are white pines. You can look for shortleaf pine, Virginia pine, loblolly pine, longleaf pine. These are all great examples that can be found in your area. Longleaf pine is not native to your area. It's native a little further southeast, but a lot of people do plant them in their yard. So these are all good examples of pines. What you're going to be looking at on the identification, there's the number of needles in a bundle. So you're going to pick off a tiny little bundle of needles and spread them out. You're going to count them. White pines have 5. That's a really easy one. And 2, their leaves, their needles, or what we're going to call leaves, is very soft looking. It's much more of a wispy. In fact, that's what I teach my students is wispy white pine. It's kind of a little way of kind of remembering that. You can also count cedars, like your red cedars or your white cedars. Arborvitae is what a lot of people call white cedar. You can also do hemlocks. Any sort of cone-bearing plant is a good example of a pine. And then finally, you have your angiosperms, and those are just flowering plants. So go find some pretty flowering plants, take pictures of them, figure out what they are. They don't have to be in flower. For instance, an oak tree, they've already flowered out, but I would 100% count that as a flowering plant because it is an angiosperm. So find a white oak, find your northern red oak. There's 2 already done. Find that beech, find that sycamore. Boom, you're done already with four trees. But if you want to go down to different levels, that's fine too. Look around your houses. If you got some irises planted, or maybe you have a garden and you put those plants in the ground, I'm going to count those because you put them in the ground. I know the instructions may say something a little different, but if it's something that you have planted, I'm okay with that. The key is don't go to a nursery or a lawn and garden section and take pictures of plants in pots. That's what we can't do. But all you need is 4 examples of those. Now, I know sometimes this is the tricky part of it is learning to identify all these things. And I get that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer my assistance to you. If you want to reach out to me by Teams, that's no problem. All you got to do is just send me a message with a picture. And since it's mobile, I think the mobile app makes it pretty easy. It's almost like texting it to me in a way. So send me a picture of that plant and say, hey, is this plant this? And I'll tell you or no, and I'll kind of help you learn what it is and kind of help you understand what it is and what it's not. So I really like plant identification. I like these kind of things. So feel free to reach out to me with any of your questions. I'll help you on that. Start early, get started as soon as possible because it does take some time. But you got a great opportunity of making 3, kind of 2 or 3 100s here at the end, specifically these 2. Presentation, get 100, and then the plant collection, get 100. What a great way to finish the semester. So, folks, finish strong. Let's really get after it. If you got any questions, let me know. Again, shoot me an email, or you can talk to me by Teams. Either way is okay. I hope everybody's doing well.